Rev up your engines!
Rusty Dusty says, Scotty, my wife and I are looking at a used 2010 Toyota 4Runner SR5 V6 with 93,500 miles. This is a good vehicle. They're great vehicles, but as with any used vehicle, always pay a mechanic like me to check it out before you throw any money down. You don't know if it's wrecked, flooded, stolen. And look at the title. If it says salvaged or reconditioned title, don't buy it. You don't want to do that. Now, make sure you understand what you're buying. They're great vehicles, but it is a 4Runner with a V6 engine in it. Those things use a lot of gas. They're gas hogs. There's no arguing that. I had a customer buy one once, and they said everybody told me Toyota was reliable, so I went out and bought it, but it's horrible gas mileage. I explained to him, you should have done a little research because anybody's going to tell you those things are gas hogs. If you don't mind the lower gas mileage, they are great vehicles. But if you want good gas mileage, do not buy that vehicle. It's high up in the air. It's going to get bad gas mileage. It's just how those things are. And if you can accept that, they're great vehicles. But don't buy it if you think you want to get good gas mileage, because you won't. Door Slam 1178 says, I got a 2009 Chevy truck Silverado 1500, 146,000 miles. My oil pressure gauge is showing no oil pressure and it's making a lot of noise. It's probably too late for me to give you any words of wisdom to save anything, because when your gauge reads no oil pressure and your engine's clacking like mad, generally the damage has been done. Oil pressure is needed to pump oil from the bottom of the engine to the top, and then gravity feeds it back down. If you have no oil pressure, gauge says 0 and your engine's clacking, you're running it with no oil pressure, bearings are shot, the whole engine is going to have to be rebuilt. On the other hand, if you ever have a vehicle that the oil gauge says 0, but you hear no noises at all in the engine and it runs fine, that's generally a broken sending unit or a broken gauge in the dash, because when you don't have any oil pressure, immediately the engine will start making noise. Now, for other people, I can help other people out here. You ever see the gauge go to 0, the engine starts clacking, turn it off immediately. You ever hear your engine clacking for any reason, turn the thing off immediately. Then start looking at stuff, because you can save damage if it just started and you shut it off. But you're set 0 and it's clacking, odds are you're going to have to rebuild that whole engine. And my advice is, when they do that, there's so much wear from no oil and metal contact, you're better buying another engine. Don't try to rebuild yours, because it might be cost prohibitive to rebuild an engine that was run dry with not enough oil in it. Kilala now 96 says, I got a 2011 Chrysler 200 V6. My right side heat is poor, but the left side works. That's a problem with the blend door, that one side is working and the other side isn't. So the one side where the blend door opens gets heat, but the other side doesn't. If that wasn't a Chrysler 200, I'd say hook up mechanic's gauge, pay a mechanic to do it. He'll analyze the system and see which blend door is on. But I know those problems they have with those Chrysler 200s. You know, they're basically Fiats. They're not really Chryslers, and they don't make them anymore. They were so junky. The heater cores on those things just clogged up. They made them like crap. And what you want to do is, to test it, take the heater core hoses under the hood off and blow through them. And if you can't blow through, they're clogged up and you're going to need a new heater core. Now, you can try flushing it out, but there's some kind of gunk that gets in those Chrysler monstrosities that you usually have to replace the heater core. Unfortunately, it's a very pain in the butt job. But you could try to flush it out with a power hose, and if a bunch of crud comes out, keep flushing. You might get lucky and it'll start working again. The last one I did, though, I had to replace the heater core, and it was a pain in the behind. Melzy Turn 6.5 says, I got a 2015 Ford F-150 four-wheel drive. It's overcharging. It's going way over. Checked it with a gauge with 18 volts. You always want to check wiring, because you never know if there's shorts in the wiring. It can make the alternator work too hard and overcharge. But 99% of the time in an F-150, when it's overcharging, you need a new alternator. Realize the alternator creates alternating electricity. That's why it's called an alternator. Then it goes through diodes and a regulator to put out a little over 12 volt direct current. And if it's putting out like 18 volts, odds are the regulator and maybe the rectifiers are gone in the alternator too. If you're the type of guy that you don't want to just guess, take the alternator off. Take it to an AutoZone. they'll put it on their machine and they'll load test it for you. Then it's not connected to your vehicle at all, and it'll tell you where it's good, bad, and it'll probably tell you that it's totally bad. Now, if they tell you it's okay, then you got a wiring problem somewhere in the vehicle, but 99% of the time with that, it's just a bad alternator when they overcharge. Handy Hannah 907 says, I got an '08 GMC Truck Sierra 1500. The gauges don't work on the dash. Now, the idiot lights come on, but the gauges don't work. Help. One of two things is wrong. I've seen both happen on those trucks. Realize that the entire instrument panel is a cheaply made piece of crap from China, and they break all the time. I see them break all the time. Could be you're going to have to get another dash. Now, they cost so much money. What I do is I go to a junkyard. I buy a used one. What the heck? Who cares? It's an old truck. It's not worth that much money. You know, get a used one. If a new one might cost you $900 or more, right? So if you need a new instrument panel, just go to a junkyard and buy one. Realize that the connectors on those are crap too. So first thing, take the dash out. There's just a bunch of plastic crap you snap off. It's not hard. Just Google it. You'll see guys have videos showing you exactly how to do it. Now, when you take it out, unplug the wiring harnesses and look closely. A lot of times you'll see bent pins or corrosion, or they're just not snapped in tight enough. Sometimes it's as simple as taking them off, spraying them with spray electrical cleaner. You want to use spray electrical cleaner because that doesn't hurt plastic, makes the metal contact, and it doesn't leave any residue. Put them back in. If it starts working, great. It was bad contact. But if not, get a used instrument panel. I do that all the time. They're not that well made, but sometimes I fix them by just tightening them up and cleaning the connectors too. And it's not hard. Don't be intimidated by taking the dash apart. It's not that hard to do. It's all plastic crap and it snaps out. Amber Knights 22 says, I got a 2012 Kia Forte. The brakes are dragging and the brake lights stay on. This is a very common problem with those that I see all the time. Your brakes are dragging and you see your brake light is staying on. The brake light works on the brake pedal. You step on the brake pedal, the switch opens up, turns the brake lights on. Your brake lights are staying on and your brakes are dragging. That means your brake master cylinder is sticking on. Because when you step on the brake light's supposed to come on. When you take your foot off the brake, the master cylinder is supposed to release, the pedal goes up, and then the switch turns off and the lights go off. Yours isn't returning. And 99% of the time, when your brakes don't return, it's a bad master cylinder. Now, theoretically, there are other things that can go bad too. Your ABS system can have problems that cost a small fortune. You're never going to be able to diagnose that yourself. From my experience of those things, your brake master cylinder is not releasing pressure. And to test that, when they are dragging, just go to the brake master cylinder when you're in your driveway and you see they're dragging, go to the master cylinder and just loosen all of the hydraulic lines coming off of it for brake fluid. If you loosen those and immediately the brakes stop dragging and the light goes off, you know the master cylinder is bad. I see that all the time on those. Dan Itchy Feet 55 says, I got an '06 Dodge Charger V8. It's in transmission limp mode and it's stuck in third gear. It doesn't have any codes. A Dodge Charger with transmission problems. That's not a rarity. That happens all the time. But a lot of times when they're stuck in a limp home mode, there's an electrical problem. And I've worked on enough Dodges. When they build those things, they build them so cheap that they make the wiring harnesses as short as they can to save, what, pennies on 6 inches of wire, right? What happens is the wiring harness going to the transmission is too tight. Driving, the car shifting, hitting bumps, starting and stopping where they jerk. A lot of times, those wires start to break and short out. If I were you, I would take a real close look at that big wiring loom that goes to the transmission. It's all wrapped up with tape. Take the tape off. Cut it off with a razor. Look closely. You're probably going to find that there's some wires that have separated and broken. Now, if you don't find any, could be the transmission's just shot. Those things only last so long. You didn't see how many miles it's got on it, but it's 14 years old. Check that wiring loom. They're often, because they're so short, they'll stretch. And my advice is put longer wires back in. When I fix them, that's what I do. I put extra long wires in. So then they can sway back and forth and not get tight and rip. They just make them too cheap. That's the problem with those Dodges. Strong 84 says, I got an '07 Pontiac Grand Prix V6 3.8 liter engine. The starter won't crank. I had it scanned and it came up with this code B1428 ignition switch power relay circuit open in ignition. I tried a new ignition switch, it didn't fix it. Help. Okay, well, it's an old Pontiac, they're not the greatest cars in the world. There's no arguing that. But you tried the obvious, the ignition switch. They do go bad, but that didn't fix it. But with that code, there's something that always breaks on it. The starter relay or the crank relay. There is a relay on that system, and with that particular code, it generally means that you need a new relay. Now, you can go any place like AutoZone, O'Reilly, whatever, any auto parts store, and they can sell you the relay for that, and it'll probably fix it. Now, back in the day when I was a young mechanic, they didn't have relays on the starter. You just turned the key and the power went from the ignition switch right to the starter. Now they use relays, and those relays are notorious for going bad. So get a starter relay, replace it. Go to a place like AutoZone, they'll even tell you where it is, show you a picture, and if they got any good guys there, a lot of them do, they'll open your hood and they'll point and they'll say, there it is right there, and replace it. And if it fixed it, hey, have a drink on me.
So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.